which is part of my 7-point agenda, is that of security. You are all aware, honorable members, of the security situation in those areas where we have minerals and in some parts of our nation. Now, that security situation had become so debilitating to the successful execution and promotion of that solid mineral sector. So we needed to think outside the box. Hitherto, it had always been deploying military personnel, police personnel, security agencies in general, combat of these flashpoints. But upon closer scrutiny and assiduous research, we discover that Nigeria has a very wide landscape. And without us rejigging the security architecture in place and injecting a larger dose or measure of technology into it, we will be deceiving ourselves. We will be scratching the issue on the surface. So I embarked on interministerial meetings, meeting with the ministers of defense, both of them, meeting with the chief of army staff, meeting with the national security advisor, meeting with all the security agencies, their heads, with a view to coming up with a very foolproof security architecture that can help us or enable us to achieve that objective of clearing the insecurities in our mining areas, so that whoever comes in to invest, whether local or foreign investor, can have a very secure environment to operate and maximize his or her profit, from which government can derive adequate and efficient royalty and taxes to increase our revenue and achieve our objectives. That, Mr. Chairman and honorable members, is going on as we speak. And in due course, you would all be taken into confidence when we want to roll out that new security architecture. But this time around, there will be artificial intelligence involved. We have to use the mechanism so that we don't just deploy men and materials into a wide expanse of land or bush. But now, with the introduction of artificial intelligence, we'll be able to pinpoint flashpoints and then deploy men and materials more efficiently and more effectively to combat insecurities and insurrections. And one pernicious discovery that we made, Mr. Chairman, is that a lot of these banditries, terrorisms, insecurities that we associate with this sector are actually sponsored by illegal miners. Now, these illegal miners are not your artisanal miners. They are not the people who pick gold rusts on the ground. No. These are heavy, powerful individuals in our country. And they are Nigerians. They are not foreigners. Yes, you can see foreigners as symptoms, but the foreigners are not the diseases. Nigerians are the powers behind those foreigners that you see on the streets. We are identifying them, and we are employing various strategies, kinetic and non-kinetic. Non-kinetic with the artisanal, the so-called lower rungs of the ladder of illegal mining. And those ones, as part of my 7-point agenda, I gave an ultimatum of 30 days, which was extended another 30 days, that they should form themselves into cooperatives. Because, as I said earlier on, nobody, every Nigerian has a right to life, has a right to basic necessities of life. And so, if government cannot provide access to these basic necessities, we cannot drive people into the bush, or we can't push them into the sea. So those of them who are so-called illegal miners, but petty illegal miners, we have encouraged them to form themselves into cooperatives so that they can be formalized and do their businesses legitimately and a legitimate living. And then, because they would have become structures, formalized structures, government can then identify them and then derive the necessary royalties and taxes therefrom. These royalties and taxes hitherto were lost to government because government will be chasing individual illegal miners all over the place. But because we have striven to legitimize them and make them responsible citizens of Nigeria, and in legitimate means, they are also further encouraged. And I can announce to you, sirs, that within the period I announced that measure, the policy, and now over 50 cooperative societies have been formed. And that's very, very encouraging. And more are still coming every time they are forming themselves into. So that is the non-kinetic tactics. The kinetic ones are the ones that I said I would let you into when we are ready to roll out. The ones we are forming with all the military agencies and the police and or even parasecurity. It also involves the Ministry of Interior. Immigration is involved because a lot of the so-called foreigners that you see also don't have proper immigration papers. So we are attacking all of these illegal activities from a multi-pronged approach to, seriously and effectively combat that menace. 3 is the fact that in this industry, in your speech, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned what the solid minerals contributed to the GDP way back in the First Republic. During our meeting with the Senate last week, I mentioned the fact that one of our 7-point agenda is to establish a Nigerian mining company or corporation. When you look at our counterparts in the oil industry, you look at the structure there, you find there is NNPC, which interfaces on behalf of government with multinationals. Here we are in the solid mineral sector. We are trying to attract the big players, without which we would not be attracting direct foreign investment into the sector or into our economy. Now, we need to have a formal structure that the multinationals can deal with, like NNPC. However, the structure we are proposing is totally different from that of NNPC. In fact, we are learning from the experiences and the hiccups in the NNPC. While the NNPC interfaces and does business on behalf of government with multinationals and all that, there is a large measure of governmental control. And we all know that sometimes government business is nobody's business. That's been a conventional wisdom, and it's a value we are trying to change. But we must put in place mechanisms that compel human beings to behave rightly. So the structure we are proposing for our own NMC, Nigeria Mining Corporation, is that it will be substantially private sector driven. Government will have its own equity. The Nigerian public will also have its own equity, while the private sector will hold a substantial. The essence of this is that we want to put in place an enduring legacy that no government after us can come to scatter or to destabilize or to politicize for the sake of our future generations. And so, Mr. Chairman, I crave your indulgence, particularly support in our effort to actualize this particular measure. And I'm very happy and it's very gratifying to note that great minds think alike. I know you have spoken about this mining company in the past. I heard you. And it tallies with our own objective and own mindset. So to all intents and purposes, I think we are working in the same direction. But that mining corporation is essential, but it must be substantially private sector driven. The establishment of a mine police is another measure that we are looking at. And it's not just a mine police alone. There are other sectors of the economy that are going to have specified police. Like the blue economy, for instance, you can have a marine police, mines police, you can have transport police and all that. But in our own case, the relevance to us is to further combat insecurity and ensure that the sites where operators will engage in the activities will remain peaceful at all times. Now, another kinetic strategy is to ensure that all host communities where mining operations take place are carried along. We believe sincerely that when host communities are not engaged actively in the operations of mining or otherwise industrial activities within their domain, such gives rise to tension, to friction, and sometimes to a breakdown of law and order. And this has led us into recalibrating the community development agreements, which we reviewed and launched a few weeks ago. Now, that document